My name is Adam Neely, and I'm a bass player. I'm a YouTuber. I'm a music educator, and I'm a general enjoyer of things. And thank you so much for coming to my workshop on how to play the lick in all 13 keys. So, the history of this workshop is funny. Beardfest put up an April Fool's joke saying, like, Adam Neely's going to come and play the lick in all 13 keys. And I thought it was really funny, so here I am. But it does, kind of bring up a question. And the question is, well, why aren't there 13 notes? And this is a question that I like asking myself. Because why are there 12 notes? Why aren't there 10 notes? Why don't we make metric music? Why don't we make, we have imperial music, it's bass 10 or bass 12. Why don't we have bass 10 music? And over there, and I can loop another little ditty here, but I can create music in what's called 10-tone equal temperament, where you have an octave and you divide it into 10 evenly spaced notes, kind of like dividing, I guess you don't divide a meter into 10 evenly. You divide into, 100. Yeah, you see? I'm American. America. But it's basically the same thing. So I can do, the rustling of the leaves adds a nice touch. So that's 10-tone equal temperament. And there's something nice about that. There's something very alien and yet somehow alluring about that. And yet, if I was to play the same sorts of ideas in 13-tone equal temperament, where you divide it into 13, it would sound not nearly as nice. I mean, it sounds all right, but it's part of it. It's the patch. So it has a very different feeling, I think. A very different, almost like horror movie feeling to that. And none of those pitches correspond in any way, shape, or form to the normal 12 pitches that we have and we play. And my question is, why did we settle on these 12? Does anybody have any ideas before we get into the mathy science stuff? The Greeks. Blame the Greeks for everything. Yes, it is the Greeks. But specifically who? Pythagoras, yes. You can blame him for many things, including the theorem as well as all of Western music. So, the most important figure in our music is Pythagoras. And you don't learn this in school, which is kind of unfortunate, but I feel like Pythagoras, he's a very strange guy. He was afraid of beans. Does anybody know the phobia of beans? Neither do I, but I feel like that's a important thing to know. in discussing Pythagoras. So he had this idea. The question is like, well, if we have these notes, we like the sounds of these pitches in the air, but like, let's come up with a reason why we like these notes. Let's come up with like some sort of mathematical, tangible reason why we have these pitches and why we're playing music with these pitches. So if you think about back to like the dawn of civilization, when people were first creating music, you first had a note. You first could sing, and you first wanted to get people around you to sing like a chant. Let's actually do that. Let's all sing Great. What's the next note? Cool, great. You sing that note, you sing the first note. It's kind of a glorious chaos. That right there, that is probably not the next note that we would come up with if we're trying to sing in harmony. And yet everybody said that this was the next note. I purposely said the term next note to be confusing because it could mean any number of different things. It could mean the next note in the melody, the next note that we're going to harmonize with. It could mean anything. And Pythagoras wanted to systematize that. He wanted to figure out a way of doing it. So, where's the whiteboard at?
Right there.
To your left.
Sweet. Thank you. Okay, great. So Pythagoras, the apocryphal story is that he walked by a blacksmith, and he heard the blacksmiths pounding away at anvils, and he noticed that the anvils that were relatively similar in size produced a similar pitch. And he also noticed that the anvils that were similar in size by a factor of 2, in other words, one double the size of another anvil, they created a pleasing sound, and that sound was the octave, which actually you guys were singing before, because generally female-coded voices sing an octave higher than male-coded voices. And this is something that we've known since the beginning of civilization. We always will sing in an octave. And he also noticed another thing, that the anvils that were roughly 1.5 the size of other anvils also created a pleasing pitch. And so he's like, oh yeah, that's cool. I wonder if we can like come up with some math to figure that out. All right, let's come up with some math. So he went back home and he found pieces of string and he tied them, I think it was between 2 pieces of metal or something. And he found that if you had one string like that and they had another string like that, and you plucked both of them, and at their same tension, they would produce that octave sound. It was like, oh, that's cool. They're related by a factor of 2. What if we did, like, by a factor of 3? Like, what if this string, we made a string like 1/3 the size of this string? And he found, oh, that sounds awesome. That's a perfect fifth. That's the same sort of thing that other, like the anvils, like, this, by a factor of 1 to 3. I don't know any math, guys, just so you know. There's a lot of math involved in this, and I'm going to be kind of trying to explain it. So any real mathematicians, please come up here. So he found out, okay, well, this sounds pretty good. If I pluck this string, it's going to produce this sound, and if I pluck this string, it's going to produce this sound. So you guys over there, sing that. You guys over here, no, this. All right, so it's kind of a pain to sing that higher one, right? And he thinks so too. It's a total pain to sing that higher one. So what he did was if this relates by a factor of 2, if I just double the length of this one, we get like a more reasonable sort of situation where this is like within the same octave as this first one. And he's like, oh, okay, by doubling the length of the string, we're actually lowering the pitch to this lower fifth right here. Which, by the way, this is the name when we have this string is like 1 or 3. Okay, so so far we have root is 1. We have perfect fifth is 3, like 3 times that, but then like divided by 2 because it's like twice the length. So it's 3/2. There we go. Sweet. So Pythagoras kind of came up with the system of taking a string length, dividing it by 3, and then multiplying it by 2. Taking a string length, dividing it by 3, multiplying it by 2. And when I say multiplying, I'm literally meaning the length of the string, but what was happening is he was taking the fundamental frequency of this lower one, And every time he divided the string length, he was multiplying it by 2 in this case. So if we say that the C is 100 hertz, the C would be 200 hertz. And this G up here, this perfect fifth, would be 300 hertz. And so what he did is he started to create the system. Is that played correctly? Here we go. By stacking these thirds, or stacking these fifths, sorry, multiplying by 3, dividing by 2, multiplying by 3, divided by 2. And eventually he got this scale, which is a 5-note scale. Does anybody know what that is? Pentatonic. Sweet. This scale is a universal scale across all cultures. And Pythagoras was the first that we know of, although this is a very Western Eurocentric viewpoint, but he was the first to codify it like this. And we find this in all cultures across the world. It doesn't matter if it's European music, it doesn't matter if it's Indian music, Chinese music, Indonesian music, African music. All cultures have this scale. Can we try and sing that together? All right, let's start here. La, all on the syllable A. R, ah, yeah, cool. Sweet. It sounds awesome. Now, the problem with this scale, and the problem with Pythagoras, is that it's very hard using this kind of math where you just start multiplying by 3 and dividing by 2, multiplying by 3, dividing by 2, to create harmony. And it doesn't sound like it's that big of a deal, but I'm going to, with the magic of this iPad, I'm going to turn this into a Pythagorean keyboard, where all the frequencies are calculated by multiplying by 3, dividing by 2. Sounds really, really nice. But cool.
You want someone to hold that?
No, it's good. Let's listen to this chord. Oh, let's actually play it right. See that like tremolo effect? Oh. Now it's gone. Pythagoras? Not Pythagoras. What's the difference between the two?
Math.
Yes. But in terms of how the second one makes you feel, what are like some textural, just like, what are some adjectives to just clean? Yeah. Any other adjectives? Saccharine. Okay.
It's like it's hugging you.
I agree. This is a much more hugging kind of chord. Hear how out of tune that sounds. And it's crazy because the cent difference in terms of how many cents off the first one is from the second is minor. It's so minor. It's actually not that minor. It's 21 cents. It's something called the Pythagorean comma. But the difference between the two of those is based on the idea, well, the first chord was created by basically taking a note and then coming up with a fifth, and the fifth above that, and the fifth above that, and the fifth above that. And if you kept going up and up and up and up and up, basically the math doesn't check out. In theory, if you take the note C and then you just keep adding fifths, eventually you get back to the note C after you do the whole thing. Like you start the beginning of the piano and then eventually hit fifths and then eventually you get to a C all the way up here. But if you're using the Pythagorean math, it doesn't look good. And I'm going to just bring out my calculator to pretend that I know what I'm doing right here. So if you multiply a number like 1 times 1.5, and then it gives you like decimals, that's not good. And then it gives you more decimals, that's not good. And it gives like more decimals. In fact, there's never going to be a point where there aren't decimals in the number if you keep doing this thing, where you multiply by 3, divide by 2. I think it's because there's no way to have a multiple of 3 that's multiplied by 3 that is not odd. Like it's always going to be an odd number, something like that. Again, I'm a musician, not a mathematician, and I'm trying to give a workshop on math, so please. So what happened is for the first 2,000 years of Western music, we had the Pythagorean system of having these stacked fifths. And they sound really nice. Let's actually try singing that. This side, can you sing this? Can you sing this? This, can you sing this? I like it. Yeah. The problem is that once you want to try and start adding this harmony, it becomes a little tricky because these notes, that third, that E that's been stacked several times, gets way, way, way out of tune. So we needed a different system. And the system that we have, and the reason why we have 12 notes, is because we build every chord and every note with 2 harmonics. What is the harmonic system? Or what are harmonics? Question, answer from people out there. What is a harmonic? Overtone. What's an overtone? All of those are correct, yes, but multiple of a fundamental frequency. It's basically any time that you hear a pitch, if you multiply the frequency by an integer, you get one of its overtones. So let's get back to this lovely board that we've been drawing. Okay. No, it's funnier this way. Okay. So if we just keep dividing this string into different lengths, shorter and shorter lengths, we get overtones of that string. So right here, if we divide the string into 4, we get the next note up in the harmonic series, which in this case would be the octave up 2 octaves, or the octave up 2 octaves, the root up 2 octaves. Yes, thank you. Sweet. Great job, Adam. If we divide by 5, then we get the major third up 2 octaves. I guess it's a major 21st? Cool, yeah, sure. Then we get smaller and smaller lengths of string. Okay, so by the factor of 6, we get octave plus a fifth. By 7, we get an octave, and then this weird interval, this harmonic seventh, and then by 8, we get 3 octaves. So the problem is of course, trying to sing this is almost impossible because we keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and we keep getting higher and higher up on the harmonic series. So what we do is we do the same thing that Pythagoras did, is multiply a number and then divide it so that we get back into the same octave. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to do the major third. So can we do this? Can you guys sing da, and can you guys sing this note? Da. Great. So everything in our system is based on that, and then the perfect fifth. This is definitely not the best way of doing this, but da, da, oh, sorry. Da, yeah. Cool, great. So, da, da. Great. So, this is what we have so far. We did this by dividing the string by 3 and then multiplying it by 2. We did this by dividing the string by 5 and then multiplying it by 4. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go in the opposite direction. We're going to add a note that is basically the inverse of C to G. We're going to kind of go in the opposite direction. We're going to produce some negative harmony right here. Da, da. That's low, low. We can do it up the octave too. So whatever one you want to sing, let's sing that. Cool. So then we can sing the major third up from that. It's going to be an A. So we have da, 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 da. Nice. Great job. And this is basically how we're going to fill in everything. We're going to create major thirds, and we're going to create perfect fifths. So up from G, what note is that? B. Sweet. Ugh. Okay. From G, a major third. Great. How do we get this? What is this? Yeah. So this is the reciprocal interval from the ones that we've created so far. So far, we've basically taken the note C and G, we've created that Pythagorean fifth sort of situation, and then we've added on major thirds going this way. So the way of hearing this and the way of doing this, and this is the way that I like to think about it, is I like to start on a note, and I like to think, okay, to get the reciprocal third, the note that's a third below this, I'm going to sing Mary Had a Little Lamb starting on this note. Mary had a little lamb, Mary had Great. So the interesting thing is, when you do this reciprocal third situation, this should equal this, right? It doesn't. And this is one of the interesting things about why we have 12 equal notes, is because if you take C and then you divide it by a factor of 5 against 4, and then if you take is different, it basically is 8 against 5. That's the ratio. Should be... Oh, it's not that. It's that ratio. That's slightly different than if you take C, multiply it by 5 against 4, and then multiply that by 5 against 4. Then that ratio, I think, is 21 against 16, I think? No, that makes no sense. 25 against 16, thank you. I was thinking of a different ratio. So 25 against 16 is a different number than 8 against 5. And it's one of these things that is kind of interesting when you're actually going through and trying to do the math with all of this, is that sometimes you'll get notes which are the same but slightly different. And part of what we're doing when we're creating the 12-note system is we're taking all this stuff and we're just kind of saying, well, let's kind of find the average between these two, and let's say that's going to be the note. And that's why we have the system that we have now, is we take all these things. These are two separate notes. When you do major third, major third, major third, you just kind of like, they're kind of the same thing. They're the same note on the keyboard, if it's tuned normally. What about this? What's down a major third from this G? We got a B flat. Oh, E flat, right, yeah, cool. Great, Adam, you're the music theory person. Okay, so.
Thirds don't exist.
We're gonna figure this out. So can you guys first sing the C? Sing the perfect fifth up from that. Use that, we're all gonna sing that. We're going to sing down. We're going to sing Mary Had a Little Lamb starting on that note. Mary had... Cool. That's how we got the E flat. We didn't say, okay, we're going to take from C and then build up a minor third, because the minor third doesn't exist in the harmonic series until much higher. We took a perfect fifth and then we constructed its reciprocal third. We're going to do the same thing with the C. Let's go down a fifth. Let's go up that octave. Let's sing Mary Had a Little Lamb on that note. Mary had... Cool. All right, I think we're good. I think we figured out... Oh, no, we have 2 more to go. What notes are those? D and so there's D, there is B flat, and there's also F sharp. How do you think we could get those? Does anybody have any ideas on how we would construct those by just like taking perfect fifths and major thirds and stuff? 5 of 5 of D flat. Sorry? 5 of 5 of D flat. 5 of 5 of E flat.
D flat.
5 of 5 of D flat.
Oh,
G flat. Oh, yeah, okay. That ends up being really weird, that G flat. But we'll come back to that.
D a fifth above G?
Yes.
F sharp a major third above this?
Yes. Yes, that's exactly it. So D, F sharp, and B flat. So we're gonna try and figure out creating this. This is kind of like the spine of fifths, and this is the spines of thirds. Spine of fifths, yeah. It's not my term. This is a term that the composer W.A. Matthew uses. So, okay, let's start on C. Na, sing a perfect fifth above. Let's sing a perfect fifth above that. Sing down octave. Okay, this is our D. We got that. Now let's sing Mary Had a Little Lamb starting on that note. Mary had... Sweet, we got our B flat. Now let's sing back to this D right here. Final note is this F sharp, major third up from that. And you notice that when we're singing, partly because I suck at singing, but it's sometimes hard to be in tune with the piano. It's because I'm using our normal 12-tone equal tempered system, and the temperament of this F sharp is slightly off from what would be a just system. It's like sharp. This is the pure tuned F sharp right here. This is what is created by going up a fifth, and then going up a third. And this is what our normal system is. It's so subtle. It's so subtle, but these are the kinds of things. By the way, this is why we have 12 notes. So spine of fifths and then thirds on either side of those. But then you could keep going. Like, for example, I could keep going in the spine of fifths. I could create a B flat down here. I could then create a G flat beneath that, and then a D up here. But one of the problems is, or, you know, I could create an A up here. Like, I could go D, and then I could go A, and do another fifth up there. But the problem is that in, like, the just system, this is a D using this thing that we just built, and then an A, which is the major third up from an F. It sounds really, really, really off. And this is the system, by the way, that created the sound that we really liked before. It's like really calming sound. However, this is a much more active, less like stable sound. This is the sound of a just intonated D major if the scale is built off of a C. So, let's kind of recap what we just did, because I've been kind of all over the place because I'm rather jet-lagged right now. We just constructed a system. We just constructed a 12-note system by taking fifths, building them up, singing some of them, and coming up with ways of singing major thirds against it. And this is a fun way of practicing it. Basically, if you just take a note, you can calculate Mary had. You can calculate a minor third. Sorry. Mary had. You can calculate the D flat. You can calculate any note based on this major third and perfect fifth business, and not really worry too much about like thinking how they're going to work on the piano. This system, by the way, is what W.A. Matthew, which is like my guru, if anybody wants to check out W.A. Matthew, his book is awesome. It's called A Harmonic Experience. It's basically the way that we think about harmony and the way that harmony is constructed when we're singing with each other. And we temper out all of those minor imperfections that you're hearing when I'm doing these different systems to create a 12-tone equal tempered system. That's kind of why we have 12 notes. Any questions on this so far? And I've definitely simplified what's basically a doctoral dissertation into like a rambling 30-minute little presentation. So if you got anything out of it, yeah, that's awesome. Sorry. Thanks guys.